The mother gray wolf moved through the darkness with a burden no wild animal should ever have to carry. The dying body of her own pup clenched gently between her jaws. Blood, still warm, stained her silver-gray chest as she navigated the treacherous terrain of Denali National Park. Each step was calculated, desperate, driven by something far more powerful than instinct. She was breaking every rule evolution had written into her DNA. Gray wolves don't approach humans. They flee, they hide, they vanish like smoke into the wilderness that birthed them. 10,000 years of survival instinct screamed at her to turn back, to find a den, to let nature take its cruel course. But tonight, under an Alaskan sky blazing with indifferent stars, a mother's love demanded the impossible. Her pup was dying, and somehow, in the ancient calculus of maternal desperation, she had decided to trust the most dangerous predator her species had ever known, a human. The remote ranger cabin materialized through the trees like a beacon in an ocean of darkness. Dr. James Carter's isolated outpost stood at the edge of Denali's most remote sector, accessible only by helicopter or a brutal 2-day hike. It was 3 in the morning when the scratching began at his door. Not random, not accidental, deliberate, urgent, desperate. James set down his coffee, his 17 years of veterinary training and wilderness experience creating an instant threat assessment in his mind. Bear, wrong behavior pattern. Moose, they don't scratch doors with purpose. His hand moved instinctively to the bear spray on his belt as he approached the entrance, every nerve ending alive with cautious awareness. What he found when he opened that door would rewrite everything he thought he knew about the boundary between human and wild. The gray wolf stood there in the spill of cabin light, her coat a magnificent tapestry of silver and charcoal, her flanks heaving with exhaustion. But it was her eyes that stopped James's heart, golden, intelligent, and filled with an emotion he never thought he'd witness in a wild predator. Pure, undiluted desperation. Cradled in her powerful jaws, limp and bleeding, was her pup. Deep claw marks raked across the young wolf's flank, the signature of something big and violent, a lynx defending territory, maybe a grizzly, newly emerged from hibernation and irritable with hunger. The wounds were catastrophic, the blood loss severe enough that the pup's breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. Then the mother gray wolf did something that shattered 17 years of James's professional experience into 1,000 glittering pieces. She placed her dying baby at his feet, stepped back 3 deliberate paces, and locked her golden eyes onto his, with an intensity that transcended species, language and the vast evolutionary distance between them. The message was crystalline: save him. I'm begging you, save my child. Time seemed to fracture in that moment. James's breath caught somewhere between his lungs and his throat. In nearly 2 decades working with wildlife across Alaska's most brutal landscapes, he had never witnessed anything remotely like this. Gray wolves attacked humans who threatened their young. They fled. They fought with savage efficiency. They never ever sought help from the 2-legged predators who had hunted them to the brink of extinction. Yet here she stood, every muscle trembling with the monumental effort of controlling instincts that howled at her to attack, to protect, to never ever trust. "Okay, Mama," James whispered, his voice barely disturbing the frozen air. "I understand. I've got him." He knelt slowly, movements glacial and deliberate, hands open and visible. The pup whimpered, a tiny heartbreaking sound that made the mother wolf's entire body coil like a spring compressed to its breaking point. James knew the math of this moment with terrifying clarity. One wrong move, one gesture interpreted as threat, and those jaws could crush his skull like an eggshell. She knew it too, but somehow, impossibly, a fragile bridge of trust hung in the space between them. James lifted the injured pup, feeling the rapid thready heartbeat fluttering against his palms like a dying bird. The mother gray wolf's eyes tracked her baby's movement with laser precision as he carried the small body toward the cabin's interior, but she didn't follow. Instead, she positioned herself directly at the window, pressed her silver muzzle against the cold glass, and began a vigil that would last through the darkest hours before dawn. Inside, under harsh fluorescent lights that turned the makeshift clinic into a theater of life and death, James worked with the kind of focused intensity that comes when failure is not an option. Every suture, every injection, every careful cleaning of the deep lacerations happened under the unwavering surveillance of those golden eyes watching through the window. The mother gray wolf didn't move, didn't sleep. Her breath created small clouds of condensation on the glass that appeared and vanished in rhythm with her pup's labored breathing inside. The hours crawled by like wounded animals dragging themselves toward an uncertain dawn. James cleaned the wounds, his experienced hands discovering that the injuries were even worse than initial assessments suggested. The attacking predator had nearly reached vital organs. Another hour without intervention, and the pup would have been beyond any earthly help. He administered broad-spectrum antibiotics, started IV fluids to combat shock, and sutured the worst lacerations with meticulous precision. The tiny body lay still on his examination table, and more than once James found himself glancing toward the window, toward those watching eyes, silently promising that he wouldn't fail her trust. As dawn painted the Alaskan wilderness in impossible shades of rose gold and lavender, the pup's breathing finally stabilized. The small chest rose and fell with increasing strength, and the rapid heartbeat under James's palm steadied into something that sounded like hope. James carried the sleeping bandaged pup to the door. The mother gray wolf still maintained her vigil, but now her ears were pricked forward with desperate anticipation. When James opened the door, she didn't lunge. She simply stepped forward, her entire body asking a question her voice could never form. "Is my baby alive?" "He's going to make it," James said softly, lowering himself to place the pup on the ground between them. "He's strong, like his mama." The mother gray wolf approached cautiously, sniffing her pup from nose to tail, investigating the bandages, the stitches, the alien scent of antibiotics and human touch that now clung to her baby's fur. Her tongue gently cleaned his face, and the pup stirred, releasing a tiny sleepy yip. Then she did something that James would replay in his mind for the rest of his life. She looked up at him, really looked at him, and in that eternal moment, two vastly different forms of intelligence recognized each other across an impossible divide. It wasn't gratitude, exactly. It was something deeper, an acknowledgement that kindness could exist even where evolution said it shouldn't. The mother gray wolf picked up her pup gently by the scruff, turned to leave, then paused. She looked back one final time, those golden eyes holding his with an intensity that felt like a promise being carved into stone. "I will remember this." Then she melted into the forest like morning mist, and James was alone with the rising sun, and a story he knew no one would quite believe. 3 weeks passed like pages turning in a book James had already read. He returned to his routine patrols, checking wildlife corridors and monitoring the park's delicate ecosystem. That morning, he discovered a fresh caribou carcass in a remote valley, the kind of protein-rich find that could sustain him for weeks. But as he approached, 3 dark shapes emerged from the surrounding brush with the fluid menace of nightmares given form. Wolverines. If gray wolves were the elegant predators of the northern wilderness, wolverines were nature's answer to the question, what if we gave a 20-pound animal the attitude of an apex predator? Fearless, ferocious, and strong enough to drive grizzly bears away from kills, the 3 males had claimed this carcass as territory worth defending to the death. And they had decided James was a threat worth eliminating. The lead wolverine charged with shocking speed, claws extended, teeth bared in a snarl that promised violence. James stumbled backward, reaching for bear spray, but he knew the mathematics of this encounter. 3 wolverines in a feeding frenzy were a death sentence. This was how it ended. Alone in the wilderness he loved, taken down by animals a fraction of his size but infinite in their savage determination. Then the forest exploded with movement. Gray shapes poured from the tree line like liquid silver, a pack of wolves moving with the coordinated precision of special forces operators. And at the front, leading the charge with her ears pinned back and teeth fully bared, was a wolf James recognized instantly. The mother gray wolf. What happened next unfolded with the brutal efficiency of a predator species that had perfected the art of survival over millions of years. The wolves hit the wolverines like a furry tsunami, engaging them in a battle that was as strategic as it was savage. The mother gray wolf herself faced down the lead wolverine, matching his ferocity with her own protective fury. James could only watch, frozen in disbelief, as the pack he had helped drove the wolverines away from their claimed territory. It was over in less than 2 minutes, the wolverines retreating into the brush, recognizing that this particular battle wasn't worth the cost. The wolves regrouped, panting, checking each other for injuries, and then the mother gray wolf approached James once more. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see the small scar on her muzzle, far enough to respect the boundary between wild and human. Her golden eyes held his with that same intensity he remembered from that desperate night 3 weeks ago. This time, the message was different but equally clear. Now we're even. Then she turned, her pack falling into formation behind her, and they vanished into the forest like smoke dissolving into air. James stood alone in the clearing, his heart hammering, his hands shaking with adrenaline, and something deeper, a profound understanding, that he had just witnessed. Something science couldn't quite explain, but the heart understood perfectly. A debt paid, a life for a life, a circle of protection and gratitude that transcended the supposed divide between human and animal. Back at his cabin that evening, James added a new photograph to his wall, a slightly blurry shot of the mother gray wolf and her pup, taken during a follow-up patrol. The pup, fully healed, played at the edge of the frame, while his mother watched with patient eyes. James smiled at the image, remembering golden eyes in the darkness, remembering trust given when it shouldn't have been possible, remembering the moment a mother's love proved stronger than 10,000 years of evolutionary fear. The wilderness, he thought, still held lessons humanity was only beginning to understand. And sometimes, just sometimes, kindness came back to you when you needed it most. Here's what keeps me awake at night. Do you think animals like this mother gray wolf actually understand the concept of gratitude and debt? Or are we just projecting human emotions onto wild instinct? And does it even matter if the result is the same? Subscribe for more incredible true stories that blur the line between wild and human.